Hello, welcome to the Deaf Kiwi Diversity Series, where we interview a variety of deaf New Zealanders. And today we have our special guest here with us who I'd like to ask some questions and have a conversation with. Hello, hi, what's your name? My name's Steve Townsend. Steve. Well, thank you for explaining your studies and the different subjects you took and the journey that took you on. Could you explain a little bit about that point onwards, so your working life and what you've done since studying? Yeah, well, I've worked as a school counsellor in 4 different schools. So firstly in Minnesota, 2 different schools there, then down to Texas for a brief period, and now I'm based in California. So a lot of sun. 350 days of sun per year. It hardly ever rains. In New Zealand, it rains quite frequently, you'll know, and it's very green here, but very brown and dry there. It's nice having the sun, but sometimes you need a bit of rain, actually, for a bit of moisture. So anyway, I've been there for 5 years so far. I joined during COVID, and so I've been there for 5 years. And I'm based in Riverside. And that is about 1 hour directly east from LA in a straight line. This is the sign, Riverside. And so that's in Southern California. California has 2 deaf schools. So the other one is up north near San Francisco, and that's in Fremont. This is a sign for Fremont. So there's Fremont and Riverside, the 2 deaf schools. And it just depends on the number of students in the catchment area in terms of how many students are at the school. At the moment in Riverside, there's about 400 deaf students and just over 200 staff. And of those staff, around about 70% of them are deaf staff, and that includes the janitors, the groundsmen, the teachers, the teacher aides, psychologists, counsellors, HR, business support in the office. Yeah, there's also a principal and a superintendent. Superintendent, like the top administrator? That's right. So they're responsible for both deaf schools in California. Right. So similar to the executive principal in New Zealand. So responsible for deaf education in the whole area. And this is the sign, superintendent. Okay, that American sign, but essentially it's like an executive principal. And in Riverside, the work that I do is part of a team of 6 counsellors. And we cover students from birth, or essentially 18 months, right through until the age of 21. Students will finish school at 18, but some of them aren't ready to venture out into the wider world. And so we have a transition time in terms of building confidence in job searching and that sort of thing. So there's 6 of us who work over the whole school, but I'm based in the intermediate age group. And so there's primary, intermediate, high school. I do work with some students from those other age groups as well, but I'm mainly focused in that middle age, really. You know, it's quite a significant development time. Yeah, it is, isn't it? Lots of physical development. And just wondering, do you see any common themes that seem to be present for deaf students of that age group? Yeah, good question. It is quite a significant time. It often depends on their background, where they're from, and can they communicate with their family? Do they have access to communication? And some families come from other countries. For example, they might immigrate from Mexico and the parents are hearing and they speak Spanish. They don't even know English at home. And so they're dealing with a deaf child at home in the family. And yes, they come to our school, but often there are a number of delays present. They can sign and they have really good intelligence, IQ. Could you describe a little bit about what EQ is? Yeah, so IQ is your ability to learn and absorb information, but then EQ is to do with the emotional understanding, emotional intelligence. And so the EQ is about understanding your own emotions. So for example, if you're feeling a feeling of anger, knowing the right time and place to express that. And within a class, it's not appropriate. And so being able to moderate that and hold that feeling and say to the teacher, can I just have a bit of time out? I need to go get a drink of water. I'm feeling angry. So being able to express that at the right time and have the ability to regulate yourself. If you're feeling anxious, then knowing to ask for some time out and go for a drink of water. So being able to communicate your feelings and emotions. And there are different layers of EQ. And so it's emotional regulation often that they're very delayed in. They can learn academically, but they don't have that understanding of how to regulate their feelings and emotions. Often deaf students have started their educational journey in a hearing school and that hasn't been effective, and they transfer to us during intermediate. So primary wasn't successful and they decide for intermediate we'll try the deaf school, and you're working with that cohort. Yeah, and so they'll be transferring to us. Normally they have the ability to use sign language for communication, but they're very used to being quite isolated in a hearing context. So the hearing peers are speaking and they don't understand whether they're being bullied or picked on at all because it's all in spoken English and they don't understand that. Then they come to the deaf school and it's a bit of an eye-opener for them because suddenly they can see and access all of the communication that's happening through sign language. And if someone is bullying them or picking on them or being a little bit rude, then that can be overwhelming to them because they have access. And they talk to their parents and say, I don't like the deaf school. I'm not happy here because I'm picked on all the time. I was never picked on at the hearing school. And so often the teachers, me, the counsellor and the parents will get together and have a conversation and explain actually, suddenly here at the deaf school, your student has access to full communication and they just don't have that EQ to be able to manage that. And so they need time to be able to sort of catch up, I suppose, in that and learn how to regulate their emotions. And you'll also know that deaf people express emotion through their facial expression. And these students are often not used to that. And they'll see emotions expressed on deaf people's faces and they think maybe they're being bullying, but no, they're just expressing their feelings. And so often they don't know what a deaf person's intention is. And they can't express themselves. They don't have the skill to say, are you bullying me? Or can you say that again? Can you clarify? And so those skills have to be taught explicitly so that they can catch up with this ability to manage emotions and have these discussions. And so they're ready for high school usually. Maybe it takes 1 to 3 years. But then a lot of students will transition at high school and they have delayed EQ at that point. Well, so it's a huge impact for students, isn't it, growing up and then joining the deaf school later in life. And it's like entering a high-pressure environment, which is great for development of social skills and knowing how to make friends and communicating, how to express themselves, assertiveness, all of those things. And so when students come to you, do you have times booked in where they come to see you in the office? Or what does that look like in terms of engaging with students as a counsellor? Yeah, that's a good question. So there are 2 responses there. So firstly, when a student is referred, if they've been having counselling already, I can have a look at the individual goals that have been put in place. So potentially the student experiences anxiety and that's the reason for needing counselling. And it might be decided that they need counselling once a week or potentially monthly. And the sessions are to focus on their goal. So maybe how to manage their anxiety and let them know it's okay. Maybe it's because of your experiences or potentially your home environment isn't so good. So it's identifying where that anxiety has come from, and then what to do about it, how to regulate that. And we also make sure that the counselling environment is a calm space for them. We want to make sure that they can feel safe, because the classroom or at home can be quite chaotic. And so we want them to have a chance to disconnect and come into this space to really just unpack these things about their anxiety and find strategies, provide tips and support. And there may be some students who find it difficult to focus in class as well. So they may have ADHD. And so it's understanding how to manage that, maybe with fidgets or a rubber band around their ankles so they can kick their legs with a bit of resistance, or instead of sitting on a regular chair, they might sit on a Swiss ball. And that movement helps them to focus on the teacher in the classroom. And that seems to be quite effective. And so that seems to work, does it? Like a rubber band around their ankles, that's effective, that helps. Yeah, they can kick their feet. So students who have ADHD. Yeah, and often we'll trial different strategies until we find one that they seem to like and it works for them. And so what we call that is an accommodation. So it's a strategy that works for them, helps them achieve their goals. We're also working with the teachers in the classroom just to ensure that they're aware that this accommodation is important for the student in class. Often one of the strategies will be chewing gum. Oh, okay, so normally you're not allowed to chew gum, are you, in school? That's right. Some of the students will say, hey, that's not fair, I want to chew gum too. But we explain to them that actually for this child, it really helps them to focus. And so there's individual needs that we try to cater for. And often there might be a sudden bout of depression that comes up for a child. They'll be assessed by a psychologist. So students will have a psychology assessment every 3 years, and they may be fine during primary school, and then suddenly they come into depression. And so then they'll be referred to us when that's been identified. I might agree that they come to see me as a counsellor twice a month until they've achieved their goals. Okay, and so when you're counselling a student, you'll have a goal and a strategy in place in terms of how to reach that goal. And then how do you know that it's time to end the counselling engagement? Yeah, well, that's a really good question, actually. I mean, it might be 1 year or 4 years, or sometimes it might be right throughout high school that students need to come to counselling. Maybe they need intensive work on EQ right throughout. So there is an individual education plan, an IEP meeting with a lot of people involved, and they might identify that actually the students still can't focus in class. We need them to continue seeing the counsellor. And then others will say, well, actually, this student's doing well. We don't feel like they need counselling any longer, and come to an agreement as a team. So it's not just me making that decision. I might think they're doing well, but then from a teacher, they might say they're still getting into trouble, or they're struggling to focus, or they're always behind in their homework. And so that's a really good insight to see that they need to continue. Okay, so you're getting the full picture there. Yeah, it's important to have a team approach so we can see different perspectives. All those different perspectives trying to work with this child and help them to achieve what they need. So yeah, it's my job. Every student is different. Often there might be 4 or 5 students that I identify as having a similar theme. And so they'll come along to me, maybe to teach social skills. Or potentially there's 4 students who have all come from the mainstream to the deaf school and they're struggling to adjust. And so I'll have all 4 students come along and discuss their feelings and about the differences and being able to identify with each other. Some of the students will miss their hearing schools. So there's a number of issues that they can discuss together. And so those students are using ASL, are they? That's right. And so I'm just thinking some of those students were mainstreamed. And so how did they learn sign language? Did they still have contact with deaf friends? Just wondering, are there some students that come to the school and don't understand sign language, and how you would manage the variation in sign language skills? Yeah, so there are some students that come to our school and they don't know sign language. And so the school offers sign language classes for students. And you might have 4 students at a similar level and they will form a class where they'll learn sign language. There's also interpreter support provided to be with a student and provide voiceover interpretation. And that may last for maybe 1 to 6 months, depending on the child. And the aim of the interpreter is to slowly transition out as the student gains confidence and expertise in sign language. So I'm also just thinking about the community. So the school in Riverside is about 1 hour from LA. And so is there a deaf community in Riverside near the school? I suppose I'm just thinking in New Zealand, the deaf schools seem to attract a deaf community. Just wondering if that's a similar thing. Is there a number of deaf people that live in the Riverside area, or are they just all over? All over, really. We do have a boarding facility at Riverside. It's called a cottage, but it's just like a dorm, really. And we don't have any students staying there during the weekends. So on a Sunday, parents will drive or they'll use a school van. Some families will carpool. Some will even fly in on the Sunday night to drop their students off. And so the students come from much wider than the local geographic community. And the students will go home on a Friday as well, because parents are wanting to have their students come back to them so that they can see them during the weekends. They don't want to have long extended periods without their students. So yeah, they see them in the weekends. And classes are 8 o'clock till 3 o'clock. And then after 3, there are a number of different sport teams. So basketball, baseball, football, American football. Is that right? Yeah, with the helmets and the shoulder pads. Yeah. They don't have rugby, actually. I wanted to introduce rugby in PE. We actually play flag football, and so I converted it to flag rugby, actually, a bit of a merging of the two sports, and they seem to like that. And so you have deaf sports teams, do you? Yeah, and they'll play against teams from hearing schools in the region as well. So they'll visit the hearing schools and have matches, or the schools will visit Riverside, and it's all ages, primary, intermediate, high school. And parents will come along to watch and support, and also ex-students who have graduated from Riverside and are now out working in the community. They'll come along and watch the football and support the Riverside team as well. So the games are very well attended, actually. It's quite a central point for the community to come in and connect on. And so the school is quite a strong connection point for the community. So adults who have attended Riverside, they'll come back and support different events and get involved. And so the alumni, what's the New Zealand sign for that? I don't think we have a sign for that. We just say ex-students. So yeah, just say ex-students. Yeah. And so one thing that was fascinating to me is the fact that Riverside doesn't have a deaf club at all. They don't. No. And the reason for that is the deaf school is essentially their club. And so they use that during the weekends. There may be deaf events held at the deaf school. There's a number of facilities there. There's a gym, and they have pickleball courts as well. That's a very popular sport. Pickleball. Okay, is that a little bit like squash? Is that right? Not really. Bouncing a ball off a wall. No, it's more like tennis, really. So you use a half-size court and with a net in the middle, and you have a ball with holes in it that you use. And so you can hit it hard and it just sort of floats through the air. It's such a popular sport, though. And so they have grounds there and games are played there. Deaf adults will use that. And they'll interact with students there as well, or is it just the deaf adults? Yeah, well, students may come along just to watch those sports because it's the weekend. And other weekend events might be held. So, for example, hosting 8 deaf schools at Riverside for the weekend. And so they have the residential facilities there. Everyone who comes can sleep there, and they can have school competitions. And so potentially a girls' volleyball tournament. Oh, yep. New Zealand sign for volleyball as well there. Football tournaments and cheerleading as well. It's a very American thing, isn't it, the cheerleading? Yeah, they have their own cheerleading teams. They'll train and have cheerleading competitions. So that's interesting. And yeah, there's a number of different sports that they will have. And so they'll open up these weekends with the 8 deaf schools to the public. They'll have relatively cheap tickets to attend, food and drinks. And so teachers will come along on the weekend to help out, and students will help out with selling the refreshments as well. A number of the students have their own clubs, like the Deaf Asian Club, the Deaf Black Club, the Deaf Mexican Club. Oh, okay. So it's valuing their own culture and identity and sense of belonging. Yeah, so they have a sense of being deaf, but also their own background, and they'll sell a lot of their own food for fundraising. And what are they fundraising for? Is it trips or activities? Yeah, so they may go on trips for awareness training, and it is really important. So having a sense of being deaf is really important, but this is really a connection where a student can feel safe to just be themselves completely. And where a student's own background, so for example, they are deaf and Mexican, they can join the Deaf Mexican Club, and there are deaf Mexican staff who are also in the club, and so they have role models there, and they have a sense of normality, and so they can really connect in with that, have a sense of belonging, and that EQ just thrives in an environment like that. So often I think we forget the importance of EQ in terms of having confidence in life and a sense that deaf people are just as capable as hearing people. And so do you think that you can develop EQ through a third party, like, for example, through an interpreter or through a communicator? Or do you think it's more important to have a direct connection to develop that? Well, I think if you have a direct connection, it's going to grow much quicker. It depends on the environment that you're in, I think. And so it's really important to be encouraged and supported in who you are, really. And so as a deaf person, it's important to be able to attend deaf events, and you're going to grow this sense of identity and belonging through those events. And so why do you think that EQ is so important? So social skills, language, communication, what effect does that have? Well, EQ is very closely tied to confidence. And it's important to have confidence because then there's a sense that you're capable. And at Riverside, there are teachers who are deaf, staff who are deaf, that students are able to see. And so they have role models there present. And they can get a sense of, well, they're capable, so I must be too. It really helps build their confidence. Because if they have a sense that they are not capable, then they'll just be helpless and rely on others and think, well, I'm different, I'm deaf, I am not capable of achieving. And that affects their learning at school. They don't have motivation. They're not able to take on what's being taught. They don't have that motivation. And then the teachers will see that something's wrong with them, they're not learning well, and then on their report, they're given F grades, they're failing. And so they've missed the underlying cause for what they're seeing. And so if they can deal with that, then the students can really thrive. Yeah, and it's about having that foundation, their EQ, who they are, understanding their feelings, their sense of belonging, connection to family, and understanding that they are deaf and accepting that fact. thinking, well, that's okay because there are other deaf people out there. And being able to deal with emotions, like if I have frustrations, have skills or tools. And that's what counsellors do. It's providing tools to people that they can store away, that they can use to deal with things as they need to. And then they're able to achieve on an equal footing to anyone else. And the barriers are able to be broken through because of a sense that I know that I'm capable, because those role models out there, they're capable as well. Without deaf teachers, deaf counsellors and other role models, then there's no sense of what a deaf student's future could be. And so I just went straight into panel beating. And one of the reasons for that is I just didn't have access to those deaf role models in my life. Now, there's also an example that we have. We have a Deaf Careers Day, and that's for intermediate and high school students. So we have that once a year where deaf professionals will come along. So deaf people who own their own businesses, work in tax, a number of different areas. So they'll come along and present for that day, right throughout the day. Okay, so different presentations about their jobs. Yeah, and there's tables with information about their jobs displayed throughout the venue. We'll have special guests come along. So one example is a deaf lady who is right into cooking Mexican food. So she cooks that and sells it as a business. And so that's an example of a deaf businesswoman. And so there's information about her business and how she runs. And so there's all of this information available to these students, and that just opens up so many opportunities for their future. They used to think that they didn't have that many options, but suddenly they realize the future could be so many multiple things for them. And so it's almost like it just removed these barriers so that they can jump on in and do what they want to do. Yeah, and so when you finished school, you didn't really have many role models back then. And it's almost like it's a cycle already, isn't it? And so now you've grown up, you're a role model, you're encouraging the younger generation. And that'll be something that they can then pass on generation to generation. So it just shows the importance of being together as deaf people, using their language, communicating and connecting, inspiring each other, having a sense that they're capable. Because if they're isolated from each other, then where do you get that inspiration and momentum for their life? Yeah, and I think an advantage of having a deaf school in one place is that you have access to each other. Now, also, at that career fair day that I was mentioning, we also invite deaf students from deaf units in the mainstream schools. We welcome them along as well. And it's quite fascinating seeing the students arrive on the buses and their reaction to being exposed to deaf professionals and the different work options. Seeing that there are deaf teachers, having that exposure to them has a real impact. Because in mainstream, they may have a limited sense of their future, but coming along to an event like this, it just opens up the horizons for them. Okay, and so a sense of deaf adults supporting deaf youth and the importance of deaf adults getting involved, maybe volunteering or doing something, have some involvement in activities with youth and encouraging them into their future. Yeah, I think that is key. It really is. It has to start from that point, and from that point, they really can thrive. And I think often people think that the most important thing is about academic learning, but that EQ is just vital. Often it's disregarded, but that EQ, when that is established, it really helps barriers be broken through. And developing resilience as well, that you can stand strong and do what you need to do. Yeah, and it reduces reliance on others as well. A sense of independence and capability in a person. And so EQ is really the tool that empowers someone to break through and to have motivation to learn. Well, I just have to extend such a huge thank you for your time here. I just grabbed this chance since you were here in New Zealand anyway. It's been great to see you here and have a chat and share this interview together. It's great to hear a little bit about America and what things are like there. And yeah, just grabbing this time to have a chat with you. We've learnt a lot, I think, about a different country and different ways of doing things that are not the same to New Zealand, and that's great. Just an understanding of what is out there, and it might be helpful for New Zealand as well to think, actually, what would work for us here in New Zealand and what would suit the New Zealand context. It's my pleasure to be here today. I think it's just so important for deaf people to not have a sense of accepting where they are and reducing their opportunities. I think they need to be willing to explore all opportunities for their future. Well, that's great. Thank you so much for your time. Goodbye. See you later.